Welcome back, everyone, to Confessions of a Loveaholic. We have the wonderful Christy Holt with us today. I'm so excited to have her as our expert guest because she's going to be talking to us about navigating divorce with grace and some other yummy topics. This is an area that I happen to not be an expert in, which is a lot. However, I personally have not been through divorce. She has. And as you all know, that can be kind of tricky. And that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about today in Confessions of a Loveaholic around the addiction to staying and suffering, sometimes caused by religious measures, sometimes from our own addiction that we don't even know why we stick around when there's pain. Let me tell you a little bit about Christy, because there's a lot to say. She's quite a badass. Christy Holt is a self-proclaimed happiness hussy, adventure guide podcast host. Go check out her podcast called Create Your Happy Inspiration for Conscious Women. Available wherever you listen to podcasts, which is everywhere nowadays, which I love. She's an international best-selling author of the book Unstuck for Women. Go find it on Amazon. Who loves to show people how to get out of survival mode so that they can consciously create the happy life, relationships, and impact they desire. Absolutely love this. A big part of what I talk about with my audience is getting out of survival mode. And a lot of people don't really know what that means and how you do it. So we're going to get into the nitty-gritty here today. Christy, welcome.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. These are some really juicy topics, and I cannot wait to share a few tidbits and nuggets just to leave your listeners with something that they can take forward and actually start changing their lives today.
I love it. Thank you, Christy. Are you ready to just dig right into this?
Oh yeah, baby. Was born ready. So
I knew it. I knew it was coming. She was like, she was born ready.
Dive right in. Okay, that's
I
not
love
entirely true because I did go through a phase of life that was pretty difficult. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about that today.
Ooh, I love that, Christy. I love that. Isn't that just so powerful to recognize that source of wisdom instead of pain? Now it's like, I love that. So, Christy, for my audience listening, there's a lot of women who are going through a tough time in their relationship, and they don't know if it's a communication thing or if it's a forgiveness thing. And so for those of you listening, Christy, can you help us out? Tell us, when is it that a person should start considering and thinking about divorce versus relationship counseling or therapy? How did you know it was time for divorce?
Well, I mean, I think that everyone's situation is going to be a little bit different. So I don't know that there's a one size fits all sort of answer to this question. I think it's more personal assessment and just really looking at your own situation with neutral awareness that can help you to highlight what is actually going on. Now, I'll tell you what happened for me and the kind of the pivotal moment where I realized that that was the next logical step. But this might not be the solution or the same situation for everyone. Now, when I was in my marriage, it was not very happy. I will take responsibility for my part in that, but it takes two to make a marriage work. And so I was really focused on the other person. I was focused on my ex and hoping and wishing and dreaming of a life that was better and watching him not have any interest in changing that. You know, we did try some of the things like couples counseling, and we did try a lot of the exercises that they suggested. And at the end of the day, it sort of came down to a personal decision for me because I had done the work on myself and I realized that I deserved something better. Now, until this moment, I had actually been staying in my marriage because I truly felt that that was what was best for my family. I didn't want to break up my family. I didn't want my kids to have to deal with a divorce and two homes and all of these things. I felt that I was protecting them by staying as the protective barrier in the relationship. And I had this sort of aha moment, like it was a couple of things all at once. Number one was like, holy shit, it's me. I'm actually the common denominator in every last one of these problems. Okay, so I realized I am the common denominator. And then I also realized that I'm the common solution. I am the one who actually has the power to change things. And so while I realized I was protecting my kids, or had thought I realized that I was not actually doing them I was doing them a disservice by protecting them in that way. And what they really needed was not a perfect mom, not a mom who would, act as a buffer and put them ahead of herself. What they needed was someone who would go first and lead the way, to show them how to create their own happiness, to show and model them what good, healthy, happy relationships look like. And I realized I can't do this anymore. And so that was sort of all of those pieces coming together, realizing I have to be responsible for me, and I can't just tell them what I want them to experience in their life. I have to go first and lead the way.
Wow, Christy, you just brought up something that's so powerful. And listeners and watchers, please, please, please take notes. Christy said that she did not want to break up her family, the idea of breaking up her family and the kids going through having divorced parents and splitting up the home, because that is, quote unquote, breaking up the family and disrupting them, right? And so many women and men stay in relationships that have, let's call it, served their purpose, right? Have completed their chapter. Yet we stay longer and create a whole encyclopedia because we think we're protecting them. And to your point, Christy, I want us to go in a little bit deeper here, because you said that staying would actually not protect them. It was actually going to do them a disservice, and they learned from modeling you and your behavior and how you teach them to love yourself and themselves instead of what you tell them love is. Can you go a little bit deeper into that and tell us about, this might lead us into a little bit of your expertise around boundaries and people pleasing. Go ahead and take us into your magic around how you did that with your children, the conclusion, and how your kids are doing now.
Well, I always joke that kids don't really listen, but they are watching, because it seems like if you try to speak wisdom to them, they are like, la, 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 la. But they are observing. And while it may not always show in the moment, you will see that those lessons are actually being picked up. Just you'll see them a little further down the line. My kids are teenagers now, and it's definitely an adventure still navigating. I do not proclaim to be any sort of parenting expert by any means. However, the relationship that I have developed and created with myself has really shifted things, I believe, for our family as a whole. And I am now part of a blended family. I have the most incredible partner now. He also came with a bonus son and a dog, which makes our family a family of 6. So it is always very busy. Now, the biggest thing I think that I want to really share here, I guess, is the fact that what you are doing is modeling the example that you want for your kids. And you kind of touched on people pleasing. Like, to back it up so that we have a little contrast here and context. When I was in that unhappy relationship, I was bending over backwards. I was definitely martyring myself. I was coming last a lot. And also, or not at all, you know. But
Sorry, I had to unmute myself because that was too good.
had to slide that one in there. But the fact is, I was living for everyone else, but not myself. And I truly lost track of who I was as an individual. I went through what I call now lovingly just a momitis, where I kind of lost track of what made me unique, what made me different. And it sort of just ended up all the responsibility piling on top of me. And instead of expressing my genuine needs or desires for life, I was going with the flow. I was doing what I was supposed to do. I was shooting all over myself to keep up with everyone else and the expectations. A lot of the expectations, from family, from church, from society. There are so many pieces to this good girl conditioning. And that's a whole topic for probably another day. But, the good girl conditioning is so strong. We are taught very early on that we are meant to be nurturing and giving. and we're supposed to be sweet and nice all the time. So we're not allowed to have big emotions because that's too much. And we're not allowed to, be expressive because now we're a bossy bitch or whatever the scenario is. And so we end up, and yes, men too, probably in certain circumstances, but for the moment, let's talk about the good girl thing. We end up fitting ourselves into boxes and making ourselves small so that we don't create a problem in our experience. And when we're doing things this way, we often end up looking for love and validation and acceptance from external sources. And yes, happiness, joy, and bliss. We look everywhere outside of ourselves because this is essentially what we've been conditioned to do, is to not trust ourselves to come through with these things and to find it from the world around us. And so we'll spend a lot of time looking around the world trying to find that special someone, that person that's supposed to help you to be fixed, to be whole again. And that is actually pointing us all in the wrong direction. And so as long as we continue to seek these things outside of ourselves, we miss the truth that everything that we have ever needed is already whole and complete within us. And so when we can lean into that and discover that love that's at the base of who we are, everything can really shift.
I love that, Christy. You're really you brought us into a really powerful segue of something I wanted to talk about today, about this idea, and a lot of different cultures have it. We have it in Mexico as well. It's around looking for another half, right? So in Mexico, in my culture, I grew up with, you're looking for tu media naranja, you're looking for your half orange, right? Which sounds funny. So you're looking for the other fruit, your half of fruit. So what do you, I call this a myth, and you and I talked a little bit before the show, and I know that you agree with me on this, around this idea of there's no such thing as another half. Do you want to walk us through some of your teachings there for the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is actually a topic that was so important to me that I kicked off this most recent season of my podcast with a full episode around the idea of you complete me. Because yes, it's so romantic and sweet to think that there's someone out there that's just perfect and magically going to make us feel whole and loved and have all of our dreams come true. But it's a fucking fairy tale, right? It's not actually reality. And the truth is, and here's like my high level teaching on this, you don't need someone to complete you because you are already whole. What you need instead is someone who completely accepts you. That's it. If you can download that one into your entire being and go forth, if you're looking for a relationship, or even if you're wanting to rekindle the spark, if you come at that as a whole human, because you are, no matter what you've been through, you are whole, you have everything that you need. That is actually the basis for the magic that you see and want and desire.
I love that. And this is going to bring us into a little bit around, to add to your point, Christy. One of the things that I love to tell my clients around, what the fucking fairy tales told us and how Disney messed us up. Right? There's a lot of things, right? So we might have to do an episode just on Disney and how much Disney messed us up. And but around this idea of the other half and having someone save us, right? We have so many sort of setups to set us up for failure, especially for those of us who have built a career, who are independent and who are driven and have created incredible accomplishments, on top of being amazing moms. I personally am not a mom at the moment, but I admire moms so much because I think y'all are super women. I don't know how you do it, but on top of all that, we are expected to be seen, or when we treat ourselves as damsels in distress, thinking that there's going to be then a hero that shows up to save us. And here's the thing, ladies, this is very important. As someone who spent the last decade studying narcissism, you will have a hero come, but this is not the hero you want. When we live in a state of destitute, when we are not happy with ourselves and our own sense of being, when we are desperately seeking for a savior, There's only one man that can show up, and that is the controlling narcissist, because you are easy prey. How do I know that? That was me. I didn't
Yeah.
even know I was being a damsel in distress. Okay. So this is why it's so dangerous when we seek, and when people feel so sad around, like, I really want a partner. I'm like, hey, partnership, I think is our birthright. When you want that level of companionship in your life, that I wanted soulmate love more than anything in the world. And I worked so hard to get it. But the work wasn't to find him. The work was to find me.
Yeah. That's the thing, right? When people talk about a knight in shining armor to come and save them, well, you're waiting on the wrong fool to come, because the one that's going to save you is going to be your damn self. And like, that is essentially what happened in my situation. I realized I'm the one who is going to have to step up. I'm the one who is going to have to save myself. And I'm the one who's going to have to take radical responsibility for the things that I'm doing and saying, the way that I'm showing up, and who I am being in that process. Because until you shift those things, you are going to continue to attract and experience the same old stuff, right? If you don't change you, and that is quite bluntly the only thing that you can actually change. You can't change another person. You will literally die trying if you think that that's going to be your solution. So let's just, you know, put that focus back on the things that we can make an impact on, and that is ourselves. Now, going to the extreme, we can also go all the way into things like people pleasing and doing all of these things. And they're not bad things, because we want to be, I think humans in general want to be loving. We want to be giving. We want to be nurturing. It's not that those things are bad or wrong. It's just that there shouldn't be a cost to yourself to do those things. They should be coming out of overflow and abundance, because you have so much love in you to give. And if you're trying to give from an empty cup, I know this analogy has been like overused, or the airplane with the oxygen mask, but you are in no condition to truly give at your greatest capacity until you're giving to yourself first. This love, this acceptance, this joy, this peace, this bliss, it's actually, found within you. It's not going to be found anywhere outside of you. It's found within you and then experienced and expressed into the world. And yet so many of us have it backwards, because we're chasing, an illusion of perfection, that if we could just be good enough. And at the same time, very much in this world, I've noticed that a lot of the times where I felt like I'm not good enough, I've also felt simultaneously like I'm just too much. And so it feels like this impossible, like a big rock. You're like rocks all around, because you're in this incredible hard place where there is actually no way to win that game. And so until you step up and save yourself from the illusion, you are going to continue to experience things probably that you don't want.
Christy, can we help the audience and give them some understanding of what self-love activities, rituals, what does this actually look like, right? Because we see a lot there's been a very much of I'll call it a commercialized sense of self-love, which is like, getting your massages and your mani-pedis and all that stuff. And like, those are nice.
Yeah.
However, those are not the things that I personally mean when I'm walking my clients through doing the healing work. Do you want to walk us through what it is that you mean for that, and for the people you help?
Yeah, I mean, those things that you described there are basically self-care. And first of all, if we are going to learn to love ourselves, we do need to care for ourselves and nurture ourselves. So some of those things can be really helpful tools if they feel good for you, and if you can afford them, and if, that feels right for you. But those aren't the magic solution. Like, going out and getting a pedicure isn't going to make you like yourself anymore if you don't do the inner work. So to me, ultimately, I think that this adventure, this discovery of self-love is not as fluffy. It's not as pampery. It's looking at who you truly are and coming to grips with yourself, right? It's seeing your perceived flaws. And by the way, I don't really think that I think that we're perfectly imperfect, and that those flaws are likely superpowers in disguise. again, another topic. But if we can start to see our perceived flaws and our special gifts as something that is innately worthy, we can start to build a relationship with ourselves that allows us to show up authentically and unapologetically as ourselves. That allows us to give ourselves grace when we make mistakes, because guess what? We're all human. We are going to make mistakes. And if you're not, are you even living? So, having this grace and compassion for yourself is not like a flick of a switch. It's a practice. It's mindfulness around the thoughts in your mind. It's intentionality with allowing yourself to have emotions flow through you without building a story around them, right? Because the emotions are good. The stories are what keep us stuck in the loop. It's about getting out of survival mode, which keeps us stuck in the same loop over and over. Whatever is comfortable, whatever is familiar, doesn't mean it's good for us, but it's familiar, it's known, so it feels safer to our body. And getting out of that survival mode allows us to learn to respond and consciously create rather than simply react to the things that are going on around us. And this conscious knowledge, this intention of what you desire to create, is you standing in your power, is saying that I am worthy of having the life that I desire because I love myself enough to step out and create it. And so it's a lot of self-acceptance. It's a lot about radical responsibility. Again, not pointing fingers around things you can't change, but owning your stuff and actually doing the things that you say you want to do to create a different life. So I know that wasn't a very like specific answer, but I feel like it's so multifaceted. We talk about self-love. I just think that the compassion and the acceptance is a necessary part of it. Some of the actual ritual type things that I like to do are things like a walk to clear my mind. I love to do yoga. It brings me into my body. I start every morning with I call it a meditation, because I'm like way too lazy and it's way too cold outside the bed in the morning, especially here in the winter. So some of these things that I build into my daily routine are simply carving out time for me to spend time with myself, to give myself whatever form of that nurturance might be required in that day. And yeah, sure, it might be a pedicure, it might be reading, might be listening to some music and having a good dance party in the kitchen for one. It could look different for everybody from day to day. And there is no wrong answer so long as you're listening to what you need.
I think that's beautiful, Christy. And I'm gonna do a quick shout out here to your journal, the
Yeah.
Unstuck journal that I see there behind you. And although I haven't had the pleasure of opening up your journal yet, which I'm gonna order one, you brought up something. I think people underestimate the power of acceptance, right? Because one of the reasons I like journals and journal prompts is because it allows us to think from within ourselves, the power, and we start having a relationship with ourselves, which is probably the first time that we recognize what self-awareness is, right? And self-awareness is step one. Too often, though, however, women will go from self-awareness to then self-judgment.
Yep.
Right? So it's understanding that. So there's a difference between people who are narcissists, sociopaths, and psychopaths who think they are truly perfect and they can do no wrong. That's not what I teach my clients, by the way. I teach you that you are perfect exactly who you are and the way you are, and nothing that happened in your past is going to block the level of love that you deserve. You're not dirty, nothing. You are deserving and worthy of love exactly the way you are now because of your past, not despite it.
Yeah.
Very important, because of our past, not despite it. So the inner work that you're talking about is going from the self-awareness to and not skipping the judgment part. It's going through the judgment and getting to the other side of acceptance, of recognizing, yeah, you know what? My lower teeth are crooked and I'm okay with that. I know I'm still awesome, right? So it's not going into I'm better than someone else because of my
Right.
crooked teeth. It's I'm just perfect for me And the person who's gonna love me is gonna love me the way I am. I'm gonna tell you a crazy story here. I was, I think, a sophomore in college. I went to visit a friend's home, her family home, and her mom very lovingly but really bitchily, uh and again, she's from my same hometown as my mom, and the women in this town, when they grew up, all they had was, the only option was to get married and have children, right? Like that was their career choice. So I recognize that they didn't have a lot of options. And, I'm the first woman in my family to finish elementary school. Okay. So the fact that I even had the option to go to college and marry the love of my life, like I'm really, really blessed. So I bring that to your attention because it matters with what this woman told me. This woman, her only option, her career was to get married, have children. That was her livelihood, right? Like that's what she had to do. The reason that matters is because the only thing that women had going for them in these rural towns in Mexico was their beauty and their ability to cook.
Right.
Okay. But their beauty was the first thing that mattered to them. It was what they could show off, right? Their families could show them off. They could show themselves off. And even if they didn't feel beautiful, they would do everything to show off this beauty. So for her, I think it was the first time she met me, we were in the kitchen chatting about I don't know what. And she turns to me and she says, "Hey, Emmy, I think you need to get a nose job. You need to fix that. Your nose is pretty big." And for those of you who can't see me, I have a very beautiful side profile with a nice big bump that I grew up being extremely self-conscious about because my mom doesn't have this nose and this bump, and my dad does, and my grandfathers do. So I was ridiculed since I was a little girl. Okay. And even though in this moment with this lady, I hadn't started the inner work yet. So I was still I was very hurt. I cried on the way home, and I probably cried for several weeks after because my mom had said the same thing. She hadn't told me I needed a nose job. She just told me that my nose was ugly. And it was always indirectly, by the way. It was by making fun of my grandpa's nose and like, well, I have the same nose. So therefore, right. So I bring that up because that was something that I personally had to work on myself and recognizing like, and actually in that moment, I don't know what came over me, but in that moment, I told her, I wasn't dating anyone at the time. I told her, well, you know what? If a guy's going to love me, he's going to love me with this nose or not at all. So good for that version of Emmy, even though she didn't really mean it at the time.
Yeah.
Now I do, and I can tell you my husband absolutely adores my nose. But yeah, I'm gonna pause there because I know Christy has a lot to say about this.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. So that self-compassion piece, right? I think if we look at the expectations, first of all, we have been told that it's selfish to care for ourselves too much. It's like selfish if we love ourselves. Like there are some serious miscommunications, whether it be intentional or not, that have left women, especially, incredibly wounded in these areas and feeling like we're never going to be good enough. I mean, if we look at the diet culture industry, the beauty industry, it's literally billions of dollars being fed, you know, fed the story that we are not good enough and we need to spend billions of dollars so that we can actually look like we're supposed to look. And no, thank you, because none of us are, growing from trying to measure up and look like anybody else. And we're not meant to. That's not what we are here to do. There's this strange sort of phenomenon that like has induced us to want to fit in rather than actually belong, which the belonging is what we truly desire. That means that we actually can show up and be ourselves and be wholly accepted for being our authentic self. Whereas this fit in thing has us wearing masks and people pleasing and contorting ourselves, bending over backwards to just not stand out. And that's a real shame because we are not born to fit in and stay small. We are, and that's just not a fun way to live, right? Because it's very like you would feel just the energy of thinking about staying small feels so restrictive and constricting. Whereas the idea of being yourself and accepting yourself and loving yourself and allowing yourself to show up authentically and express yourself with your voice, with your intentions, with your creations, whatever it is that you want to bring into the world, you would see that like energetically, it's just so much more expansive. And I think that people often get hung up around this idea of acceptance. They say, well, no, but like, I don't like that part of me. Okay, well, nobody's asking you to like it right off the hop. But can we just admit we're starting here with what we've got? That's really what it is about. And so if you take this over to relationships, this is where we're starting. It doesn't have to be starting at the best place, right? It doesn't mean accepting where you're starting doesn't mean you have to like it, that you have to stay there and that nothing has to change. You still have the ability. And in fact, your capacity to create change is so much greater when you take an honest look at where you are starting and accept that this is a situation you are currently finding yourself in. This resistance to the reality that keeps us head in the clouds, that keeps us staying in something that's clearly not working. Hello, 2 hands up for that one for me. And this idea that we have to have it all figured out before we take the first step has kept too many people in analysis paralysis. I think a lot of times, first of all, it is normal to question whether you should stay in your relationship or whether you should make a change. I think that's a pretty normal human thought. However, I will say in my current relationship, I am not really questioning that because it is very stable, healthy, and happy. And so the very line of questioning, like, I don't know if this is, I don't know if this, that in itself is a red flag. Not that the relationship is a red flag, but the fact that you're questioning just invites deeper self-discovery. And in my journal, since you mentioned it, it is sort of a couple of practices in one that will really help you to hone in on the self-discovery. Because the truth is, again, you can only change yourself. And it's much easier to affect change in the circumstances around you when you know yourself really well. And so that's what this is about. It is about leaning into gratitude, because gratitude is an incredible practice for you to find appreciation and acceptance of what is. Because so often when we're in survival mode, we're not looking for those positive things. Our mind has a tendency to look for all of the worst case scenarios and things that are awful. And so we want to really take us out of that mode and get us into a really grateful, thankful place where we're actually seeing the blessings in our life that can sometimes be harder to see when we're in that funk. It also includes intention setting, because if we are not intentionally creating the things that we want, for example, in my relationship before, I was doing a lot more complaining at the time than creating. And yes, it requires 2 people, willing to do the work and come together. But if you're not even trying and still expecting your partner to change like I was, oh my, it's not going to work, right? That's a recipe for staying stuck in the muck for a really long time. And so that intention setting, what you wish to create, actually sets you in motion. And then that's the place from which you can take aligned action, actually do the things, not just think about it or dream about it, but actually go out there and do the things. And it's less about even the doing than just showing up as the person who you wish to be. They say like fake it till you make it. And I like to just flip that one around and say, be it till you see it, because ultimately you are in control of you. And instead of, looking for that perfect person out there, start being that perfect person, and you will find and create the relationships that you truly want. Again, you got to get to know who you are, right? You got to get to know what it is you really want. And when you're fumbling around and maybe you're a little bit like I was, not sure what I wanted, I was very clear on what I didn't want. I could have wrote a list of the things that I didn't want when I was in the tail end of my marriage. But when I actually got clear on what it was that I did want, I wanted someone to laugh with every day. I wanted someone who would have deep, meaningful conversations. I wanted someone who was, we're going to maybe have a hard time keeping our hands off each other. Like, these are the experiences that I longed to create. And they didn't happen by accident. They happened because I set about intentionally creating them. And so that is me standing in my power and creating this most amazing relationship that I have now. And, yeah, it's not always easy to take radical responsibility, and it's not always easy to give yourself that compassion. but it sure feels better and it's definitely worth it.
Wow, Christy. Absolutely love everything you just said. 100% agree with all of it. And audience, I'm going to leave you with this before we go into Christy giving us her info so you can reach out to her directly. Be it till you see it.
Yeah.
I know it sounds silly or like syntax or technical change, but it is way more powerful than fake it till you make it. Fake it till you make it actually creates imposter syndrome and like makes it drive deeper. Be it till you see it actually is a transformational breakthrough ritual for you to change your identity.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful, so powerful.
And we're
Christy,
so
thank
done
you
with
so much.
faking anything anyways,
Right?
right? We're not faking anything anymore, ladies.
Right?
Like,
It's been too many millennia of that. So
yes,
we want exactly. We were no more faking anything. And by
anything.
anything we mean anything.
Exactly. Don't be faking that either. They will never learn if you are faking those things. Okay.
Exactly. I love it. It serves no one, ladies. It serves
No
no
one. Yes.
one. Christy, oh my goodness, had such a blast chatting with you. How can people get a hold of you? Give us all your deets so we can stack you.
Okay. Well, honestly, you can find everything on my website at coachchristyholt.com. You'll find information about my book, my journal. I actually just created a super fun sweary coloring, unicorn coloring book. It's super fun with affirmations and mantras to help lift you out of your funk. The podcast is there. I have various courses and mentorship offers. Everything, like I say, is on the website. And if you want to stalk me a little on social media, my favorite place to hang out is definitely Facebook, but I am pretty much everywhere.
Awesome, Christy. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. And for everyone listening, Christy has some really cool topics. Maybe we're going to beg her a little bit, wink, wink, Christy, to come back on the show so we can talk about this whole idea of relationships that are 50-50. Yeah. And you can tell from Christy's reaction, the big BS myth. So we're gonna really be diving into that because it's kind of all over the place right now, and we have to be the ones creating the new healthy paradigm and not let these myths proliferate as if that is the truth and reality. So Christy, again, thank you so much for being on the show. We're so excited to have you again to go into some more details, and we're gonna go stalk you. Go get her journal, go get her books, go get everything, and go check out her podcast because you're gonna have a blast.